For 77 years, NATO has run on a single promise. America defends Europe, and Europe stands with America when it counts. That promise was never questioned. Joint exercises, shared intelligence, leaders at every summit repeating the same pledge, an attack on one is an attack on all. But it was never truly tested because America never once asked for anything back. Then, a war broke out in the Middle East, and for the first time, the US needed its allies to show up. America's Secretary of State just told every NATO country
and I've been a big supporter of NATO. And one of the reasons why I've been a supporter of NATO is because I believe that these basing rights give us leverage and give us flexibility and operational capability all over the world. But if NATO is just about us defending Europe if they're attacked, but them denying us basing rights when we need them, that's not a very good arrangement. That's a hard one to stay engaged in and say this is good for the United States. So all of them's going to have to be re-examined. All of it's going to have to be re-examined.
He went on Al Jazeera and said it plainly. The bases, the troops, the entire arrangement gets re-examined when this is over. And if the worst happens and Russia ever attacks, support from the United States isn't guaranteed. Every US military base in Europe sits on soil controlled by the host country. They're joint-use facilities, built and funded by American taxpayers, staffed by American service members, governed by bilateral agreements that each capital negotiates individually with Washington. Since NATO was founded, that setup never caused a problem. America defended Europe. Europe let America operate. The arrangement was so routine that most people forgot it was even an arrangement. It just looked like the way the world worked. No ally had ever looked at a base that America built to protect them and decided to lock America out. In socialist government did exactly that. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and Defense Minister Margarita Robles officially banned all U.S. use of Naval Station Rota and Morón Air Base for anything connected to the Iran operation. They closed Spanish airspace to American military aircraft, and then they went public and called the strikes profoundly illegal and unjust. Rota sits near Cádiz in southern Spain. It's the gateway to the Mediterranean for the U.S. Navy, home to destroyers, Aegis missile defense ships, and the logistics backbone of the 6th Fleet. Morón, outside Seville, is where U.S. Air Force tankers and Special Operations aircraft stage for rapid response across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Both facilities exist because the U.S. built them, the U.S. funds them, and the U.S. mans them to defend Spain and its neighbors from exactly the kind of threats Spain now refuses to help address. American aircraft that had normally staged out of Morón for the Iran operation had to reroute through Germany and France, adding hours to missions that were already time-critical. Tankers that could have refueled bombing runs over the Mediterranean from Spanish bases had to fly from hundreds of miles further north. The operation Spain refused to support is the one trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway that carries the oil Spain's economy runs on. Spain's government didn't just say no, it held a press conference about it. Spain wasn't alone. Germany showed reluctance. Turkey was openly critical, but Spain was the loudest, because Spain turned American planes around over its own airspace and then took credit for it on the world stage. And that's what put Marco Rubio in front of an Al Jazeera camera. Rubio didn't come to this as a NATO skeptic. He spent his career in Washington backing the alliance. That matters, because what he said on March 30th came from someone who's championed NATO publicly for decades and is now saying the deal stopped. Making sense. His argument started with what NATO actually gives America: basing rights across Europe, provide flexibility and operational reach around the world. That's why he backed it. But then he laid out the other side. If the arrangement only works when Europe needs defending, but locks America out when it needs access to bases it pays for, that's a one-way street. And in his words, not a very good one. He didn't stop there. All of it's going to have to be re-examined, not part of it, all of it, once the Iran operation ends. And when the interviewer pressed him on whether the US was weakening the alliance, Rubio pushed back hard. Whoever says the US isn't supporting NATO is playing games. We've sent thousands of troops and billions to defend Europe. Without us, there is no NATO. Then, he turned the argument around on them. Several European leaders called the Iran operation not Europe's war. Rubio's answer was simple. Ukraine isn't America's war either. America bankrolled that fight without a second thought, and then got told not our war when it needed a fuel stop for its own. And he chose where to say all of it carefully. He walked into the studio of the network that's been the most critical of American action throughout this entire war and laid out every word of it, without apology, to the audience most likely to push back. That's a message built to reach every capital on Earth, and every capital heard it, but not every capital agrees with it. NATO was designed as a defensive alliance. Article 5 is specific. An armed attack on one member is an armed attack on all. The US and Israel launched offensive strikes against Iran without consulting their allies, strikes that most European governments publicly called illegal.